bless you. Amen. Acts chapter 7, I'm reading from verse 54. The Jewish leaders were infuriated by Stephen's accusation, and they shook their fist at him in rage. But Stephen, full of the Holy Spirit, gazed steadily into heaven and saw the glory of God, and he saw Jesus standing in the place of honor at God's right hand. And he told them, "Look, I see the heavens opened and the Son of Man standing in the place of honor at God's right hand." Then they put their hands over their ears and began shouting. They rushed at him and dragged him out of the city and began to stone him. His accusers took off their coats and laid them at the feet of a young man named Saul. And they stoned him. As they stoned him, Stephen prayed, "Lord, receive my spirit." He fell to his knees shouting, "Lord, don't charge them with this sin." And with that, he died. Verse 58 is what I want you to see as I begin to talk about God in providence. In verse 58, the Bible said they dragged him out, stoned him, but his accusers took off their coat so that they will have the freedom to cast their stone properly. They didn't want to be weighed down by the heaviness of their coat, by the inconvenience of what they had on. So they took off their jacket, took off their coat, and the person who collected all of those things on their behalf was a man called Saul. The Bible said they laid them at the feet of a young man named Saul. And Saul must have been very happy with himself that he was the head of this band, causing such mischief and mayhem. But what he did not realize was, even before he left home, God had him in mind. Even before he was born, God had him in mind. I want to talk to you about God in providence, because most of the time we don't even know who we are, where we are. Am I coming or going? We're so confused. People are saying happy birthday, you've turned 55, and you don't even know whether, where did all the years go? We are living almost in meaninglessness. They laid their coats, their garments, at the feet of a young man named Saul. God always knows what he is doing. In Acts chapter 9, verses 11 to 16. Acts chapter 9, verses 11 to 16. After he had collected instruction to go and persecute more Christians on the way to Damascus, God met with him. And in verse 11, God tapped Ananias on the shoulder. Verse 11, the Lord said, "Go over to Straight Street to the house of Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now. I have shown him a vision of a man named Ananias coming in and laying hands on him so he can see again." "But Lord," exclaimed Ananias, "I've heard many people talk about the terrible things this man has done to the believers in Jerusalem. And is authorized by the leading priest to arrest everyone who calls upon your name. But the Lord said, 'Go, for Saul is my chosen instrument.'" At what point? Was it because when he was going to Damascus? Paul himself tells us that he was separated unto the purpose of God from his mother's womb. And many people are still on a blind journey of life. Like I said, you are 55 and you still don't have direction. You are approaching 60 and you are still getting ready to get ready. I want to speak to you today about God in provision, God in providence. God in providence. He is a chosen instrument of mine to take my message to the Gentiles and to kings as well as to the people of Israel. 16. And I will show him, because I can see it already. I see yesterday, I see today, and I see the future. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake. I want you to know that God always knows what he is doing. In Acts chapter 13, verses 1 to 3. This is not my message. Maybe this is for you. God will work in providence for you. It is not always the way we plan it. It's not always the way we think it. It is God's way of unfolding his plan for our lives. I don't know who you are, but I want you to take this seriously. Maybe it's because of you that Princess overran. Praise the Lord. It is well. Acts chapter 13, verses 1 to 3. Among the prophets and the teachers of the church at Antioch of Syria were Barnabas, Simon, Lucius, Manaen, and Saul. One day, as these men were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, dedicate Barnabas and Saul for what? The special work to which I have called them. The special work for which I have called them. There are many of us that God has been speaking to you. God has been calling out to you. You hear the voice of God, but you don't recognize the voice of God. The work for the special work to which I have called them. Everyone who is sitting down here, everyone who is listening to me now, you have not come here by accident. When I was leaving my home country, I didn't describe myself as a missionary, but I knew that God had said to me, launch forth into the deep. And I sat on that plane, and God said to me, I will show you my marvelous kindness in a strange city. When I didn't even know what kind of city Milton Keynes was, God knew. He knew he was bringing me here. And I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to tell you that God works in providence. As I was getting ready to leave home today, it has occurred to me that there was a man who left his home country in Africa, Kenya to be specific, and he went to America to study. And while he was there, he got married to an American, but for one reason or the other, the marriage did not work. It was a broken home, but he left a son behind, and that woman decided that I was going to keep this son boy, I was going to train him, and this boy grew up with his grandparents mainly. A product of a broken home became the president of America. It was not because, look, there are so many people who didn't even come from broken home, but they didn't aspire and didn't get anywhere. The man who left his home country in Africa and went, he thought I was going for a PhD, I'm an academic, and he went and he succeeded. But God uses the foolish things of this world to get his own points across. I don't know why you think you are here. I don't know what you came, from wherever it is you have come from, but you are here and you are listening to this message now. I want you to know that God has been at work in your life before you were born. But it's time for you to get up and awake to the purpose of God. Appoint Barnabas and Saul for the special work to which I have called them. Who could have thought? Sometimes I say to you, God makes, when he wants to do something, he doesn't do the usual. He makes it so complex for himself so that you will know at the end of the day, this is God. Yes. That's why he brings a product of a broken home. That's why there's no way, even when you tick all the boxes, the system will still tell you, for this reason, no, no, no. God gives himself an assignment that looks impossible, just so that he can show and prove that he's God. For the special work to which I have called them. What is that work to which God is calling you? Because God always knows what he is doing. He knew it then, he knows it now. In the course of the week, I was reading up on David Livingstone. If anybody who is interested in church history or Christian missionary work in Africa, if you are interested in it, you will have heard about the name David Livingstone. He's perhaps best known missionary and explorer of the Victorian period. He was born in March 1813 and died in May 1873. David Livingstone died at the age of 60. in Zambia. But there was a rather curious and fascinating story to what influenced and motivated him to become the man he became as the instrument of God. David Livingstone, have I lost you? I'm talking about God in Providence. And I've just shown you the example of Saul, who later became Paul. Now I'm saying to you that in the course of the week, I was reading up on David Livingstone, this Christian missionary in Africa. It was reported, I want to give you a background to the man who became David Livingstone, arguably the most famous missionary, UK, European missionary to Africa, arguably the most famous, David Livingstone. But David Livingstone had a beginning, had a start. Listen, are you here? Yes, after years of service in South Africa, the famous missionary Robert Moffat returned to Scotland to recruit helpers. When he arrived at the church, one cold wintry night, he was dismayed that only a small group had come out to hear him. What bothered him even more was that the only people in attendance were ladies. Although he was grateful for their interest, he had hoped to challenge men because he had come to recruit helpers for the mission field. He had chosen as his text Proverbs 8, verse 4, which says, "Unto you, O men, I call." Because that was his text, it was a little discordant for him to be preaching about men to women. So he was discouraged. He probably had fired himself, I'm going to rile them up and challenge them, and they'll be holding on to their seats. They will come out in droves. That was his expectation. He got there. And what was before him were people who were nodding and sleeping. How can you come to church and sleep? It's because you don't know why you have come. That's the truth. You don't realize that there is a word that God will give you that will be the door that will open the next stage of your life. We don't realize it. The reason why we are losing power is because we do not appreciate the power of God at work in us. In his discouragement, he almost failed to notice one young boy in the loft pumping the bellows of the organ. Moffat felt frustrated as he gave the message, for he realized that very few women could be expected to undergo the rigorous life in undeveloped jungles. But God works in mysterious ways. Although no one volunteered that evening, the young fellow assisting the organist was deeply moved by the challenge. As a result, he promised God he would follow in the footsteps of this pioneer missionary. And he remained true to his vow. When he grew up, he went and ministered to the unreached tribes of Africa. His name was David Livingstone. Moffat never ceased to wonder that his appeal, which he had intended for men, had stirred a young boy who eventually became a mighty power of God. He was discouraged. He was disappointed. As I was in the office yesterday, Dikeleye stopped by because he had come to lock up after the workmen had gone. He didn't realize I was in the office. So he came with his two children. And so they ran up the stairs to come and say hello to Pastor. And I was playing with Emily and James. And I looked at him. Emily has a way of looking beyond her years, like an adult. And this morning, God was saying to me, that young girl who has come into your office might be inspired. Wow, look at this man, his pastor. Look at his books. Look at the office. When I grow up, I want to give my life and work for God. You never can tell the impression that you form in the mind of a child. You never can tell. God works in providence. And maybe all that will be permanently forged in our heart, oh, I had a pastor when I was 5. I had a pastor when I was growing up. And I like the way, you never can tell. Moffat felt that his challenge and his appeal that day was a waste. But God moves in mysterious ways. I don't know who I'm talking to. I didn't intend to come here to talk to anybody, but I'm talking to everybody. I was not born a pastor. I found myself into pastoring as a result of a call or calling. And I've been here in this role for about 30 years. And he has never failed me one day. You see, concerning that assignment that he has given us, the Lord will not fail us. The last time I got Deacon Leah to show you the slides and everything, we let you know that we had a shortfall of 78,000 pounds. But we've been working between then and now. Been working, fundraising, talking to everybody that we can talk to, knocking on all doors. We have raised 68,000. We need 10,000 pounds to meet that shortfall of the invoice that is due now. It was due by the 10th. They've written to us, and we sent it off to the quantity surveyor because we do things systematically. This is that independent quantity surveyor that will now write to us and raise a certificate and say, okay, we have checked their numbers, we have checked the progress, we approve for you. That's what we introduce so that we will do things properly. The quantity surveyor is going to respond to us by Monday. I know he will respond by Monday. And with that response will come the certificate that is asking us to pay. I'm going to go ahead and pay what we have, but I'm trusting God for that balance because up till now, we have never owed them a penny. But as soon as possible, we need to raise it. This is the second to the last payment. And that last payment, except God visits his people. Except God visits his people, there is there's a way in which I was telling you on Friday. Can I have that Friday thing? Let me just give it to them because they don't come on Friday. So the April 2, 2024. Dr. Allison doesn't want me to show it to you because he has experienced it on Friday, so he doesn't want you to experience it. Are you still here? Yes, sir. Patrick, good to see you. Joe, Michael, you good? Wonderful. The barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. And so I told them on Friday, I told them that there is a situation where at least you have the meal, at least you have the oil. But progressively, you and I are being pushed to a situation where there is no barrel of meal that we are even saying, please don't waste. There is no 5 loaves and 2 fishes to even start with. These days we are operating from 0, not from 5 and 2. The barrel of meal is non-existent. The cruse of oil is not even there. Now we're talking about, let's finish up what we owe them. We are 10,000 pounds short. But the final bill is 150,000 pounds. Believe yours sincerely, the cruse of oil is not there. The barrel of meal is not. There is no door left for us to say we are knocking on this door. But we have prayed today that God will have compassion on us because we have sent out application to funders. And we need for God to work on their hearts. Because you see, there's a way in which you cannot get water out of a stone. If it is not in your pocket, it cannot be in your hand. And if it is not in your pocket, and I speak from now till tomorrow, if it is not in your pocket, it is not in your pocket. The only thing you can do is, maybe you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. Maybe. And that might work for you. So there is a lot you can do besides dipping your hand in your own pocket. There's a lot. But maybe what we are not doing is we are not thinking enough about what is it that we can do. I don't mean to embarrass General, but I'll talk about it. He'll send me a text and say, this my friend, this my neighbor, this my colleague, this my... And those ones will say, this is what we can do, our widow's mite. Some will do 50,000 naira, some will do 100,000 naira, and we've been aggregating all those kind of things, even in naira. Because most of his farmer and stronger connections and contacts are on that end. And as soon as he forwards it to me, I will send him a reply and say, please, this person, so thank you for responding to General's appeal on our behalf. And he will forward it and say, oh, they are happy. They are happy to hear from you. We've aggregated money from people who have reached out to us in naira because they know us, many of them Nigerians, and we've exchanged it and we've added it to the amount of money that is responsible for how far we have been able to reduce the 78 to 68, the 78 by 68. Because he thought, I am here, but I can still do something. I don't want it to look like we're talking money and, oh, this man is asking me to go and mortgage my house. No, that's not the issue. I don't need to say this, but I sold things. I converted my possessions on that side and sent the money over because this work must go on. I am sold out for this work. The providence of God, I'm not doubting it. And I'm not saying this because I want you to break your back. No. But I'm just saying that before you were born, God knew that you are going to belong to an organization like this. And he knows that a need will arise and he wants you to play a part in it. A colleague of mine visited, Pastor Yomi, and as we were taking him round, he said, God asked me to ask you a question. Who are you building for and for how long are you building? That's the question he said God asked him to ask us. We stood by the corridor of faith and he was asking that question. He said, I don't know why he's asking me to ask you that question, but God says I should ask you exactly how long, what are you, what you have in mind, how long, who are you building it for? Maybe we are building it for the generation of James and Emily, like I said, or for what's my daughter's name? Bingpe, or maybe the generation of Bingpe. Because when Robert Moffat was preaching and challenging the congregation, he did not realize that he was sowing something in the mind of a young man called David Livingstone. Do you know what happened? David Livingstone ended up marrying Moffat's daughter. He ended up going out there to Africa and they worked together for many years. David Livingstone died at age 60, Moffat died at age 88. But when all of that was happening, when he was feeling discouraged, like I am feeling, choked, and thinking, am I speaking to people who are not hearing me? I told Dikele, last week I was not in church. So I felt like how God is looking at everything we are doing. I saw everybody come up to take one thing or the other. And I said to Dikele, I said, okay, let's sit down. I listened to your message. It was a great message about how we are the temple of God. I said, but what you did was you overspoke and over-explained. And when you overspeak and you over-explain, what happens is that people, they miss everything. They don't get what it is you are trying to. And he understood what I was saying. I said, that point you made, 1, 2, 3. If you had gone from 1 to 3, boom, you've landed your point. Because the attention span is short. Even me trying to wake you up, the attention span is still short. Entertaining you and throwing one or two things, I can see that you are not there. Do you know how difficult it is to communicate this truth? Do you know how difficult it is? I did a research. The original congregation that were here, they were Baptists. They came from Stony Stratford. They decided to do a church plant in New Bradwell in the 1850s. So they moved from Stony Stratford and they came in here. And in 1856, not even 1860, 1856, they moved here to this site. And 1 year after they moved, in 1857, they built the first building that was here. 1857. And in 1936, which is what you see there, what was built in 1857 was rebuilt, and that is what you see today. So you are a part of a history that dates back to 1857. So when Pastor Yomi comes and he says, God said I should ask you, what are you building for? So that in the next 50 years and 60 years, when some people are looking back, they're going to say, a congregation existed in 2024, and this is how they chose to take the legacy of faith forward. Are you going to be an important part of that? Whether you are or you are not, God always knows what he's going to do. And he will do it. And he will do it. I'm long gone. I don't know anything about the 1857. I don't know anything about 1936. Even in 1998, Richard Whiteman was here a couple of weeks ago. Richard Whiteman was, and you heard him. When he joined, he was earning over 100 and something thousand pounds, and God said, leave what you are doing. I want you to be pastor of a church of 60 people. Why? Because God was going to make him the leader of a group that were going to add to the legacy of the faith of what God is doing. That's the reason why that middle part, where my office is now, it was brought down in 1998, and they went deep and did a foundation so that it could be what it is today. 1857, 1936, 1998, and then look at what we are doing in 2024. God knows what he's doing. God in Providence. I don't know which generation we're talking about. Maybe the people who are going to stir up the work of God and cause that revival to flare up. Maybe they are still in the womb. Maybe the man has not even met the woman, like Moses was just in the mind of God, but he was not yet in the mind of that Levite man and that Levite woman. But that didn't mean that God did not have a rescue plan. God already had a rescue plan. The Levite man had not met the Levite woman, but in the mind of God, there was already a rescue plan. Anybody here know who Tiger Woods is? You know who Tiger Woods is? I decided to just look up on him. Tiger Woods picked up a golf club at the age of 18 months. He won more than 30 junior tournaments before becoming a teenager at age 15. He won his first of 3 U.S. junior amateur titles at age 15. At age 25, our people still don't know whether they want to go left or right. At age 35, we're still struggling. At age 18 months, that was the first time he held a club. At age 15, he was already on his way to stardom. Do you see how disadvantaged we have made ourselves? Because our understanding is dark. I decided to look at Serena Williams. You know who she is? She started playing tennis at age 4. Age 4. I just asked you one day now, what ages do you want? Ages 2 to 9. We treat them like babies. And we excuse them. 18 months. Age 4. David Beckham became a professional football player at age 17. age 17. And we're still telling our own 17-year-old, don't sleep. Pay attention. What are you giving your life to? What are you giving it for? What are you dedicating yourself for? We're still telling our so-called young adults, oh, be attentive. Oh, these people have sold out for their vocation. What are we sold out for? What? David Livingstone promised himself. He promised God he would follow in the footsteps of this pioneer missionary, and he remained true to his vow. When he grew up, he went and ministered to the unreached tribes of Africa. I have a book in my office. It's called Martyrs. Talks about different missionary activities in different parts of the world. It starts by talking about sub-Saharan Africa. It talks about missionaries. Miss Phoebe Bart, she just lasted 4 months in the mission field. Miss Martha Kodjeshal, she lasted 3 months. Mrs. Hoffman, she lasted 3 years. On and on. Some lasted 1 year, some lasted 3 months. Mrs. Patch lasted 2 years. But my book here says, nothing deterred the early pioneers of the gospel. Why did they do what they did? Why do I give my life? I'm coming to dark Africa, and 3 months, gone. 1 year, gone. Why did they do it? And what is it that they knew that we don't know still? That there's not, everything about us is consumption for today. It has to be me, myself, and I, just here and now. What keeps these men going? And what keeps them doing? They didn't know. Esther knew, even if she hasn't been there in 2 decades. She can video call. She knows what Africa is like, what Nigeria is like. Still, there was palpitation in her heart because of where she was going. Not to talk about somebody who has lived all his or her life in the UK and says, I'm going as a missionary to a place where I know the likelihood I will come back is 0. But they left. What keeps them going? What keeps them doing? The people who did what they did in 1856 and 1857, what kept them going? Did they know that in future, by 2024, you and I will be here? Did they know? But as far as they were concerned, they were doing the work of God. That's why in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul says, somebody plants, somebody waters. Are you planting? Are you watering? Which role are you playing? Because it is God that gives the increase. He's the one who says, I will come back and I will give a reward as per every man's work. What is the quality of your work? God is at work in Providence, whether you admit it or not. Let me close. I was telling you on Friday about the testimony that came out of Jim Simbala's ministry. Jim Simbala has been the pastor of Broken Tabernacle in New York City, I'm sure now for almost 50 years, together with his wife Carol. So I read in one of his books the testimony of how they were facing a major financial challenge. His church needed $6 million in order to cover an exposure that had come about as a result of a new facility they had bought and were in the process of renovating. But they didn't have this amount, and there was no obvious means through which they could lay hold of this amount. Within the time frame they had within which to raise the fund, the situation is just like our own. They had commissioned the job, they had signed the contract, and they had given them payments, and then the brook dried up. So he decided there's a missions work to be done in Argentina. God this bill is your bill. I'm going to do this mission, this work. And so, he writes, after 9 days, we flew back to New York City on a 10-hour overnight flight from Argentina. I rested a few hours at home, then went to the church. I'm reading his words now. My desk was piled high with mail, faxes, and telephone messages. I started working through the pile about noon, and by late afternoon, things really got interesting. He writes, I opened 2 letters within the space of 10 minutes that made my heart leap for joy. One was from a man in the Midwest with whom I had shaken hands once or twice. I wouldn't have recognized him that day if he had walked into my office. Yet his note said that God had impressed him to give us $1 million for the new campus project. The second letter was from a group of people whom I had never met. They informed me that they will give us $5 million. Both gifts were unsolicited. The gifts totaled exactly $6 million, the very amount with which I had struggled. The Lord obviously had not forgotten us while we were busy doing his work in South America, nor had he forgotten the rest of the congregation praying at home. We have just prayed for Project Ebenezer. We are a continuing chain in a long story that God is writing. That's why I took you back to the 1800s. That's why I took you back to 1936. That's why I reminded you of 1998. Now, the weakest link in the entire building is that hall that collapsed. Because in 1998, they didn't touch it. When they were renovating this place, when they were rebuilding that place, they didn't do nothing. So it is the weakest link since that time. And it has fallen on us to keep the testimony of God's faithfulness, so that tomorrow when you are writing a book and a story, you can say, I was there, I was a part of, just like James Simbala has put in his own book. But what I'm sharing with you today is not about holding forth. It's about the fact that God makes provision for his commission. And that includes you. The assignment that God has given you as an individual, he is able to make provision for the commission. Let me close by taking you to Genesis chapter 22. Very quickly, I'll be done in 5 minutes. Is that okay? Don't send me a text and ask me whether I'm angry, because I'm not angry. Genesis 22. The provision will always be available for the commission that God has for you. As an individual, as a student, as a husband, as a wife, all of these things, these roles are commissions from God. Are you fulfilling your commission as a husband properly? Are you fulfilling your commission as a wife properly? Are you fulfilling your commission as a son or daughter properly? It's not because God cannot make a provision, because he does, and he always will. Can I just read it quickly so that we can close? Mr. Vaughn, you ready? Okay, I'll be with you in a minute. It has to do with the test that God gave Abraham. And how the son was asking him, his son Isaac was asking him, I see everything else, but I don't see the sacrifice. The same way you and I are saying, look, we don't see. Lord, how are we going to do it? Forget the 10,000 pounds. I know that God is going to do that. I know. I mean, if he's done 68 in how he will do 10. I know. How many people believe that he will do it? You know, what we need that faith to be stretched is not... We have, by the time we finish this project, we'll have spent 650,000 pounds. And I'm telling you now, we are at that point where we can say that of the 650,000 pounds, the only thing now standing in our way is 150,000 pounds. The one who has done is that 450? The one who has done the 450, can he not do the 150? We will tell you, maybe you come back for, when we are doing the rededication. So I'm not talking about just the church. I'm talking about the fact that God, even for you, there's a provision that God has made. Okay, and so you know the story. Isaac is asking the question, where are you going to get the money to pay my fees? Where are you going to get the money to, pay the mortgage? Where are you going? And he's saying, somehow I just know that God will provide. Now let me read from verse 13. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Yireh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. Listen, the conclusion that I am drawing is that the provision will always be in place so long as you're on the path of God's commission for your life. On the mountain of the Lord, on the path of his commission, on the path of his assignment, when your will is aligned with the will of God and the purpose of God, the Lord will provide it. That's what I'm sharing with you. God works in providence. You are not here by accident. There's a reason. But it starts from verse 13. What does verse 13 say? Abraham looked up. Do I have any man here and any woman here who will not look around at the difficulty and the complications and the overwhelming perplexities, but will rather do what? Stand up on your feet. Look up. Look up. Where is that my last slide, my final slide? As they look up, give me my slide so that they can understand what it is that I'm sharing with them. Look up like Abraham did. That's when you will see the provision. What does it say? Let's say it again. I want you to begin to pray as you look up. Mr. Vaughn.